goal of this podcast is to help you break in and thrive in advertising. We do that every single week by sharing the stories and advice of those rocking it on the other side. This week, we break into branded entertainment with Matt Rotundo. Matt Rotundo holds the position of head of brands at Sugar23, which is a company that diverges from traditional ad agencies by focusing on entertainment production and talent management. So unlike conventional ad firms, Sugar23 specializes in integrating brands into media through creative partnerships and projects that range from TV shows and movies to talent collaborations. Instead of just inserting products into scenes, they work on embedding brands into the fabric of entire productions, enhancing narrative depth and relevance. Think about how Mattel and the Barbie brand reclaimed its narrative of female empowerment and inclusivity through a major film project, moving beyond traditional advertising into a realm where brand values are woven into engaging stories. This is similar to what Sugar23 sets out to do. And Matt is at the head of it. So, you will learn how to break into branded entertainment, where advertising meets storytelling in a seamless and impactful way. You'll learn about Sugar23's unique strategy of connecting brands with Hollywood's creative projects early in the development, ensuring that the brand values are authentically represented. So, this episode not only highlights a fresh approach to advertising, but also provides inspiration for those interested in pioneering roles at the intersection of marketing and media production. You're going to love this. You're going to want to connect with Matt. To do that, head over to his LinkedIn, which he'll talk about at the end of the episode, but I will also link. And I hope you enjoy. This is the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast, and as usual, I'm your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. Wonderful. All right, Matt Rotundo, welcome to the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. How the heck are you doing today, sir?
I'm terrific. Thanks for bringing me along.
I'm excited to talk with you. I was telling you before we started recording, it's been a little bit since I've recorded an episode. We were backlogged, which is a good problem to have in content when anybody's making content. So if I'm a little rusty, listeners, call me out, let me know. And I'm excited to talk with you today about where you're at, Sugar23. It's not a traditional ad agency. I've told you we've done about 270, 280 interviews, and Sugar23 stands out. And I know Brian Bonilla also agrees with that if he's listening too. So let's start off with introducing who you are, Matt, and what you do and where you do it at.
Sure. As you said, my name is Matt Rotundo. I am the head of brands at a company called Sugar23. We are an entertainment production and a talent management company. So we wouldn't put ourselves in the company of traditional ad agencies in that sense of what we do, but we are working with brands to help them show up in media in different ways, um, by partnering them with ourselves or others like us who create TV shows and movies for a living, and just finding ways to make them more relevant for brands.
Right. I love this, like, because traditionally, like what's it called when a brand shows up in a film? Product placement. What is that called?
Sure. Yeah. Product
Product
placement.
placement just for like a shot. I think the ET, and what was that first one?
Reese's Pieces.
Reese's. That was like the classic. Was that the first ever product placement?
I don't know if it was the first, but it definitely made a lot of noise.
Made a lot of noise. So is that what you guys do? Is that it? I mean,
No, I mean, you could say Barbie movie is,
right.
I mean, Barbie is very product forward, obviously, but if you want to start, we can start with this big recent example. I talk about it this way. Barbie movie was appealing to people because it was a great movie. It was, super creative, inventive. You were familiar with the IP. Um, but that's what made it popular. What made it kind of zeitgeisty and really impactful was it telegraphed what they wanted the Barbie movie to stand for, or the Barbie brand to stand for. They
Mhm.
showed that the brand through the characters were about female empowerment and, gender equity and inclusivity and all these themes that Barbie as a brand had frankly lost over the years. And this one movie, very creatively done with some of the, best Hollywood talent, it reclaimed that narrative. Advertising is always about trying to help a brand have a narrative with an audience. What are you and what do you stand for? Barbie didn't have an awareness problem. They had just lost the narrative of, is
Mhm.
it good for young girls to play with this toy? So
Right. So rather than Mattel doing a traditional ad campaign with 60-second spots, 30, and social media and influencers, you would think that would probably be the natural way to go. You put that in ChatGPT, they would say probably have influencers represent the brand. They went with this branded entertainment route, and it worked tremendously.
exactly. I mean, they tried for years to be like to change their opinions. They introduced different size and shape and color Barbies, but they still, it just hadn't really, it wasn't enough.
What
So,
What are like other examples though of branded entertainment at a large scale like Barbie? Because
well,
that's an obvious one. But what else can like to help our listeners because we're new and we want to learn different routes to break into? Like what else can we look towards?
so we have, let me back up. We've been doing this for about 18 months. So we have a bunch of things that are close to being kind of audience ready, but are still
Hmm.
in development. Um, but there's a lot of brands who are doing things. Nike has a division called Waffle Iron Entertainment.
You used to work there, right?
I worked at their ad agency
Okay,
originally, Wyden and Kennedy. Yep.
got it.
Um, so Waffle Iron Entertainment, right after COVID, partnered with Imagine, and they did a series called The Day Sports Stood Still, which was a documentary on Max that just followed different athletes' journey as COVID was happening. So that was, it was just very authentic to the athlete's point of view on what we all experience in our own different ways, but put a lens on it from people we admire, and you could see kind of their impact. So that was a film. Um, and brands have been doing a lot of documentaries. Procter and Gamble does this. They've been doing it a really long time. They just announced they're introducing the first soap opera that is being brought to the world in like 2 decades. Like the soap operas have been the same. Nobody's kind of attempted to reinvent that category. So brands are starting to, not starting to, there's been different versions of it. And most of it has been in documentary form.
Hmm.
Barbie, but you've seen, Transformers with Hasbro, Legos. Those are
Right,
toys are
right, right.
easy. Toys are kind of,
Yeah.
it's easy to make that leap. We use this as an analogy. Take Ted Lasso, for instance. If Adidas presented Ted Lasso, it would be, it makes sense for the brand because it's soccer based. It's a very soccer based brand.
Yep.
One little way the brand could get involved is, you know, as I understand it, Jason Sudeikis is a sneakerhead and he, loves Jordans. And so the jerseys, I don't know if this is true, but I pretend it is for this story. The jerseys have Nike swishes on them because, of course, if on any, professional soccer team football kit, they've got a logo. So, if Adidas had done that, their logos would have been on it, and then also it's on Apple. You can't reach audiences on Apple with any media money. So the idea is brands should find projects, entertainment projects, early stage that reflect what they stand for. It can be what they do, or like, Adidas to Ted Lasso. It could be what the values they want to project to their audience, like Barbie did with kind of female equity through that film, um, or just other aspects of culture they support. So we have a show with a big beer company or a documentary with a big beer company that spends a lot of marketing dollars in music. So the project we're doing is a music focused project that's not going to have any a beer in it anywhere, but it's very aligned to what the company stands for. So when you
It's
see it,
genius.
it's not a departure, but you'll sit down and watch something that hopefully you enjoy, and then you'll think that, huh, that's interesting that this brand is the one who made this possible.
It's so smart. as long as it aligns with the values, right?
Right.
And I like the Ted Lasso, what they should have done. And the Adidas example there's a great connector. It's helping me grasp this really easily. So where do you guys come in Sugar 23? Because you mentioned a couple different verticals or offerings that you guys have. Tell us about the founder and how you guys come to play. Early development projects, right? Is kind of like connecting the dots and finding brands that could pick up these early development projects. Help me understand this, how this ecosystem works in your world.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if it makes sense to kind of go back to the beginning and bring it back to here, or if I should just jump in. I'll just jump in first. So Mike, my business partner, on the name on the door is a gentleman named Michael Sugar. Michael has spent his whole career in entertainment making movies. He won the Oscar for the movie Spotlight in 2016. He was part of the team that did True Detective, which was a very innovative model. You didn't see movie stars in television series. You didn't see limited series that were going to reinvent themselves. Season after season was going to be a totally different storyline with different casts. That just didn't happen. So it was a new model. So he's always been kind of chasing, or always been thinking about those new things. The company had as an overall deal with Netflix for a very long time. So a lot of the shows, 13 Reasons Why, the OA, the Laundromat. He produced a series called The Nick with Clive Owen. So a lot of like premium entertainment stuff. But he had an experience where a project made its way to him with Procter and Gamble, and he had said, and he hadn't worked with a brand in this way, and their challenge to him was, "Can you help?" They just wanted a documentary about things that have happened happened recently that have changed our world forever. And as he thought about it, he's like, there's so much here. There's climate change and refugee crisis and George Floyd and just, social media and mental health and all these things. And they're like, well, this could be a series. And the answer back from P&G was, we tried to sell it as a series, but no network wanted to buy it from us. He's like, well, okay, let me try it the way I would do it. And he went out and took all those themes and went to people who really care about those kind of social territories. So climate change, he went to Leonardo DiCaprio, and um, mental health. He went to LeBron James, mental health in sports. Trevor Noah for the story in changes in media, and Trevor Noah like that, and also attached to as executive producer to the project overall. When you go back to the network with that, we call it a package. That package of people associated, they're very interested. They want it.
Right.
And so
Right.
guess what? It sold. And nobody was like, well, why is P&G here? They were the enabler of the creative opportunity. So, those famous people that would cost a brand like P&G or others, many millions of dollars, did it for, the lowest possible thing because they cared about, the content that was being made. They were grateful that somebody was telling those stories that are very important to them. So with that experience, Michael decided there's something here. And, fast forward from that moment, we then had these strikes that really reinforced how Hollywood was going through an existential crisis. And so, Michael was a bit ahead of that. We met ahead of the strikes and started working together. And I brought more of a brand. I grew up kind of on the brand side of the equation. And what we do, or we approach these projects, typically brands bring their ideas to Hollywood to say, hey, will you make this for us? We want it to be entertainment. Will you make it for us? And then, the great Hollywood producer that you go to has to decide, what the check should be, what the check should cost. Our model is different. It's like we're doing things that Hollywood already wants to make. We are just ensuring that they align to the values or themes that are important to brands. And we're bringing them together at a very early stage. So the brands can have some authorship to make it really relevant to their mission and their strategy, if
Got
that
it.
makes sense.
Yeah. I don't know. I kind of want to just do like a little like thought exercise, like if breaking and entering as a media company that stands for getting people into their dream jobs, reducing barriers to enter education and equal access to education. That's what we want. We want to create content around that, some sort of movie or documentary series. We come to you. Like, is that something like what would go on next in that hypothetical scenario?
What would go on next is we would look at what types of entertainment people our networks running that are in that ilk. Nothing's going to be exactly right for what you want, but there's some things that are going to be like if we brought you this, and I'm just struggling to think of an example. Yeah, I don't have a good entertainment example. So, but sometimes that's the point. Like, you know what? There
Hmm.
isn't this. If you want it to be on Netflix or Apple or NBC,
Yeah.
it's got to be the kind of thing that they want to run. So sometimes
Mm.
not everything lends itself to being
Yeah.
in that way. But I'm sure there's an example. We can circle back to it.
Sure. Totally. So then you would find something that would be of interest to, let's say, Netflix. Then you would connect those dots.
Yeah. Then you come up with an idea. You put the pieces together. So, if it's a scripted idea, you go find a writer that's really known for the theme or the type of story. We're doing something now that's about a female startup. So it's a comedy. So we went to the woman working on it. Her name's Sarah Tapscott, and she writes for the Sex Lives of College Girls. And she worked for she was in the writer's room at the Mindy Project. The networks know her. They know her body of work. We know her work is going to be great. So we've got that. And then we figure out who would, in that project, Scarlett Johansson is an executive producer. So she loves this idea. She loves our model. And she hasn't done anything in television in this way. So for her, it's an opportunity. So, and this is for a brand, and a brand's not going to pay any, they paid for the script. They paid, a fair, appropriate price that anybody in Hollywood would pay to get the script written. But Scarlett is attached as a producer. And so we have her. Once we have the script, we'll go um, figure out who the right director would be, who some of the actors would be. And then we'll go and take it to the distributors, the platforms. And hopefully, with a package like that and a great script, they'll say, this is a show we want to make. And then they take over the production. So that's how
Interesting.
the process works.
I love it. It's so different. It's so interesting, and I'm
It's
glad that
very
we're
different for
I-
sure.
I'm glad we're talking about it at a high level, just so people. We want to get people that are listening. If they're listening now, you're like, wait a minute, this is something new. This is something I want to do. Maybe I studied film in college or some sort of production esque role as an undergrad. We want people to be like, this is it. I didn't even know this existed within in the realm of advertising. So, and hopefully change their path and connect with you and illuminate them. So I'm glad that we're doing this.
Yeah, and there's a lot of companies. I mean, maybe now's the time to just give you kind of my journey as a way
Yeah, I
to
was gonna say
where
let's
you.
flip it back to see then how did you get here? I know you're not a fan of linear career paths necessarily, so and you've had your own podcast talking about that. So I'd love to hear about how you broke into this industry and advertising, high levels along the way, biggest mistakes, biggest success, lessons, and then get us to where you're at today. Does that sound good?
Sure. My first job out of college was on a private yacht. So nothing to do with advertising at all. Um, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And that seemed like a cool job. So I did
Where
that
did
for
you
a
go
year.
to school?
I went to Syracuse University.
A lot of private yachts over
Nope.
there.
No, I headed south and but what it allowed me was it allowed me to go just after I worked on the boat. I saved a lot of money, and I say that if the audience here are younger people figuring out their path, and maybe many of them have seen the TV show Below Deck. It was like that. Although I will admit I've never watched it because I bet I have my memories and I don't want them to my experience to be seen. I don't want I want to keep my memories pure, and I feel like that will make me feel like I might have not done it
I
well
haven't
enough.
seen it, so I would love any context of what it means to work on a private yacht and the benefits.
It's a lot of boat washing, and you wear silly outfits sometimes, but a lot of times the you have a lot of free time because there we're available, it was a 125-foot yacht, and we were in the Caribbean, and we would have the owners on occasionally. But most of the time, we kind of had free time. And we do those boats take a ton of maintenance, so
Mm.
just
Who owned it?
work it on the sun. Um, the boat I was on, it was owned by a gentleman, a family out of Little Rock, Arkansas, and they had a I'm sorry, a trucking business. He had some interest in some banks. So
We got to get
just
that
your
guy on too.
run of the mill millionaires. But
Nice.
it was great because, like I said, I had was able to put a little money in the bank, which gave me a little bit of latitude to go and kind of figure out what I wanted to do. You know, in other parts of it was my gap year. You know, it's just instead of like, you
Yeah,
know, building additional credit card debt, I made money. So I say that because young people, that's a very viable and awesome kind of first gig. And when you're interviewing,
it's fun.
I stood out a little bit from, I was the guy who worked on the boat versus, another person who waited tables. So,
I'm
and
sure you could figure out a way to kind of like that narrative, like hard work. I don't know how you would connect the dots into the next job. So how long did you do the boat? You did that for a year?
I did that for a year, and then I moved to Portland, Oregon to visit some friends from school who had moved there in the meantime. And then my first experience with advertising was I was going through temp agencies. I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do. But I know I was burning through my money, so I needed to figure something out. And literally, I was at the gym one day, and somebody had a Syracuse sweatshirt on, so we struck up a conversation. And that guy was at like a local ad agency, and they said they offered me an unpaid intern job. I said sure, so I did it for a while. I'm like, advertising's cool, and then that company went out of business. So,
Hmm.
um,
What was
but
it?
I had a little nibble of what it was like, and then I went and uh started work. I started waiting tables, and then I started looking around, and there was a place that at the time I pronounced Whedon and Kennedy because I didn't know. I
Oh
knew
yeah,
that's how little I knew about one of the greatest agencies of all time to this day.
yeah.
So I got fortunate that they would give me a shot, and so I started out as an account
Uh,
coordinator at
How
Whedon and
did you
Kennedy.
get a shot? That's important because we got to get the details. Did you know somebody in there? You were waiting tables. How did you like? Let's not skip over those details.
I wish I could give more. I have no I I don't even remember how I got the first interview. I definitely didn't know anybody. So I guess the good fortune in my situation was they had just won Microsoft business, which at that
Mhm.
time was like, because it's just been known for Nike and great creative. And then this big beast of Microsoft um, became a client, and they had to staff that sucker fast because it was a massive.
It's a
So
huge point, a huge lesson point. Like being at the right place at the right time, like and staying in tune with your network. It start early networking, like as soon as possible, because you never know when agencies are going to win new business, and they're going to be on a rapid hiring frenzy, and they're going to come to you if you're top of mind. There's no hiring season for advertising. There's not like it's not like those like big four accounting firms when they know that they need to hire at this time every year. So I like that point and it's a good reminder to everybody.
And here's another point, because I didn't have a lot. I had zero. I had very. I shouldn't say zero. I was part of a company, an ad agency that went out of business, so I had more than zero, but not successful advertising experience. So when I went into interview, and the guy who interviewed me is a friend to this day, and then he has said that I was. He always remembers my interview because maybe this was stupid or it just, dumb luck, but I went in with like, I had collected ads that I liked, that I thought were good, and I brought them in. And so I just kind of prompted the conversation to be like, I haven't done a lot here, but I can tell you what I like about these ads. And
Did they
so
make those ads or did
no,
you?
they were just kind of all over the place.
That's funny.
I just rolled the
That's
dice on
cool.
it. Yeah. So I figured if we're going to talk to people about advertising, I had to have a point of view. So I, um, I
Matt,
collected
you'd be
some.
surprised. Like, I'm sure you've come across this. Like, I've come across this with conversations where I talk with students or I'm even interviewing them and they don't talk about the work that Havas has made or I'm assuming Sugar23 has made. They might just talk about themselves. It's like you gotta talk about your POV and what you like about what you're interviewing. Do your research, do your homework. So you bringing in ads, that's fun. That's a little extra step that goes a long way.
Yeah, I mean, if this is really about getting your first job, like I've I've always been crafty. Like even just how I sent my, you know what might have happened? Because I remember this. I sent my I really spent a lot of time, even though like I had no experience, I spent a lot of time on how they received my resume. So I printed it on like a super thick cardstock, and then I sent it in like a brown paper bag. And the place I was working at that went out of business, they had spent all this money on like their own branding, and they had this really cool sticker that had like a muscle arm, like a
Hmm.
holding a pencil. Like it was just like kind of a like just represented kind of, I think, like, creativity, creative strength maybe. And I used that as a sticker. And I remember it was such a pain in the ass to put this package together, but I just figured they get so many. I mean, this is before email was really a thing too. So but I think it's even more important in this day and age where everybody emails their thing. To get something on your desk that's interesting
Right.
to open makes, you're going to give that person a shot.
Yeah.
Anybody who, I believe wholly in just how are you going to be memorable when, because I've interviewed tons of people and everybody feels the same, especially at the end of the day. Everybody's resume looks the same. Everybody's, and I've done it to great extent. I actually, during that period of time, I had one person, because I was applying for all kinds of jobs, call me to tell me how wrong they thought my approach was in sending and how I submitted for a job. They're like, this person took the time to call, didn't want to hire me at all, but took the time to call me and tell me. I mean, I wasn't offensive. It was just like, you were way too confident or arrogant or whatever it was. I
Oh my
said,
gosh. Hey, that's
note
good though. We
taken.
like feedback.
Yeah, I would love feedback, but I mean, in hindsight, it must have been, in hindsight, I must have really, really stunk it up pretty good for that,
But you
for that.
learn from it.
You totally did. Um, but yeah, I think standing out is the most, especially in a creative industry.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
um, and especially if you're, if you're a creative, maybe a lot of that is kind of table stakes. You gotta go,
Right.
big
So
and different.
what was your role that you got at Wyden?
Yeah, I was an account person.
Gotcha. Yeah. I think more, and even today now, it's like, do account people need portfolios? Do they need to showcase the work that they were a part of, or how do you showcase, like, if you're a student, or were you in a club? Were you did you have clients at some point, right? Did you start up something like a little social media agency in your undergrad or recent grad experience? Can you showcase the clients you worked with in a creative way? So those are some things that I've been thinking about and talking with students about, like especially for account track. For me, it was this damn podcast
Yeah.
that's made me stand out because there's a lot of traditional account people applying for these jobs. How do you stand out differently? For me, it was the podcast. So I try to brief students that are looking for the account industry because you don't have like the portfolio stands out in copywriters and art directors. That's what gets you a job. They look at your work, they look at about you. But how do account people stand out? So like what you did with the bag at your first agency, and the care that you put in that creative entry. For me, it was the podcast. So what can you do, the listener that wants to be in account management, that stands
Here's
out?
the other thing I did. I was as creative in my follow up to meetings. Follow up is so important. Like not just a thank you email or, at a minimum, it was always a handwritten note. Like,
Mm,
just something that shows up. And
I love those.
but I would, I took it so much further. Like some of my favorite. One time I was interviewing, and I really wanted to live overseas. Once my career got started, because when I worked on the boat, I met all these people all over were from all over
You
the
got a little
world, and
taste.
I'm like, I got to do this. So, um, I remember meeting a guy who, and this was funny, like video conferencing. Like I had to get the IT person to open a video line between New York, where I was working at the time, and this guy lived in Hong Kong. And it was so clandestine. I mean, I was basically asking the IT person of the company to let me interview at another job without
Oh,
letting him know. So, because there was just so far, like that was a big deal to do a video conference. But anyway, the guy the guy's like, I see a lot of myself in you and like how you think and talk. And so I mean, this cost me a bit, but I like took a, to like got a mirror, and I like wrote my message on the mirror about just like how the best thing I had heard in a long time was, I admire him and his career, to hear he saw something of himself in me, and I mailed that to Hong Kong. And so,
Oh
it's
my
not it was
goodness.
the ugliest thing in the world, but the thought of it and
Right.
the effort got me a long way. So,
I
um,
love it.
follow up, creative follow up. Even if you stink an interview, they're likely to give you another shot. So if you really want a job, that follow up can be so important. And the other
I
thing
love
about
it.
jobs too is like, you know, especially in this day and age, like I feel bad for people because you can have great meetings and then they just stop. They don't reply to your messages, and it just becomes they, ghost you. But a million things come up in, agency people's lives when they're trying to, even when they know they need to hire. So just staying top of mind in a creative way, that even if that job didn't go your way, that doesn't mean the door is totally closed. So it's a relationship business, and most of the jobs I had from kind of that first point forward have been facilitated in some way by the relationships I've, made in place one. So
Yeah.
that's really how, you know, an interesting career path develops, I think.
Yeah. That widened you. So you landed that as an account manager. What were you working on there?
It was Microsoft. It was during that time. I was there about
Gotcha.
5 years. It was very hard. I learned my diplomacy from working at one of the most creative agencies with one of the most product oriented companies in the world. Like the two did not speak the same language.
Oh
So
yeah. Yeah.
I was forever trying to find harmony between
Yeah.
two groups of people that just didn't see eye to eye. Um,
Where did you make the shift? I guess when did the brand and entertainment come into your life after traditional ad agency world? Tell me about the transition when you got to where you're at now.
Yeah, so after Wyden in Portland, I was a young kid. Portland was a sleepy town at the time, and this was like the late '90s. So I'm giving orientation to people. And then I moved to New York City, and sometimes you don't realize how good you have it in your first job, and that place, like I said, was and is special. And I every place I went to was never even close to what I had there. So I was bouncing around and did all kinds, trying to find my spot. Um, when TiVo happened, like DVRs happened,
Mhm.
and people could skip what I made for a living. It made me reevaluate my career choice. I'm like, gosh, now people are saying they just genuinely want to move past the thing I spend all day trying to
Yeah.
make.
Yeah. Now
So
even more so with ad block and skip ads.
so it's like I just don't know if I want to do this anymore. So then I went to Hong Kong and just, kind of distracted myself with international travel. Um so I didn't get that job that the mirror was attached to, but I finally
Yeah.
found my way over there. I
What
was there
job did
for
you have over there?
I worked for just big multinational ad agency that was unfulfilling, to be honest. It was so traditional. Um, I'm not naming names
Sure. Sure. Sure.
I don't want to bum anybody out.
No,
Um,
no. But yeah, it's good to
so
know. You still got the fulfillment of traveling and being
yeah, it was
in.
amazing. Um, and then just again through my network, I was given a chance to go to Creative Artists Agency, the big Hollywood talent agency, and all the talent agencies. I think CAA at the time was very advanced, working with brands and helping brands connect with culture. So, and it was like a kid in a candy shop because here you are with all of the coolest things being made. And by way of example, CAA put Hasbro's Transformer toy into the first movie of what has become to so seeing that happen um, was pretty thrilling. And then Hasbro left in grateful people. I'm kidding. Edit that out. But they left and went to the other talent agent, another talent agency, and we got Mattel. And to be honest, the Barbie discussions began. This was in like late 2000, like 2008, 2009, 2010,
Oh
something
wow.
like that. So that's how far back. It may seem like an overnight success, but Mattel was working on making entertainment out of their IP as far back as then.
Wow.
Um, so but what brings us to like where I am now was I worked at a talent agency that, has they represent a ton of actors and writers and directors and put usually anything that's very popular in TV or movies, they have some connectivity into it. So it's just an amazing flow of culture and early exposure to what's to come, which was great. The challenge was you're still a couple phone calls away from the people who are actually making the stuff. And when you're talking about brands doing entertainment, to bring this full circle to where I am now, the producer is the engine. So the producer are the people who, you know, they shape an idea at the earliest stage. They make all the decisions, creatively at those early stages. They raise the money, they fight the fights, they go and pitch it to all the they take it out to the networks. So you need to be with the producer when you're making something. And a lot of brands, the challenge brands have had is there's been many layers between a brand. So it could be someone at the agency that comes up with an idea, and then they have to figure out how to get it to the people that can make the idea. And who do you go
Right.
to? Maybe you go to your media partner because they spend the money with the networks, so they
Right.
they got to know those folks. So that's one path, and um, or you can go and hire those talent agencies like the department I worked in. But still, there's still a few phone calls. They got to call their colleague. If I want to make a TV show, I got to call my TV agent colleague and tell him what we're thinking, and then he has to understand it and remember it to take it to a producer. Like, so there's a bit of telephone that can
Right.
be a little
A lot of
challenging.
layers. Yeah.
So what we're doing now, again, there's a lot of people doing it successfully from all of those vantage points, or doing, but I've seen, based on my kind of journey, shortcutting to the producer is a fast way to try and develop what we're trying to do.
And that's what you guys offer. You eliminate those barriers of the layers of multiple rounds of communication to get to the producers. You guys are directly uh, tied with them. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
that's exactly right. And we just did something. I don't know if when they were setting up this talk for you and I, they told you about our project called the Way Up Fronts. Did they mention
Yes.
our
Yeah.
Way Up
Let's talk
Fronts?
about that.
Yeah. So Brian Bonilla, your friend and broadcast associate, he did a feature on Michael and I about our Way Up Fronts. So go read his article. He would appreciate it, as would we. Um, and it was, so the Way Up Fronts. We obviously know what the upfronts are. And it's where the networks show marketers and advertisers the projects that they can interrupt with advertising. Like, here's where you can place your ad and stop people from watching the thing we put on air. And then ours, the Way Up Fronts, is, it's a developmental way, if you will. It is, we collected producers who are known for hit shows, mostly in the unscripted space, and we had a bunch of brands. We probably had 40, really top-notch brands attend. It was a virtual summit because it was our kind of our beta test of doing this. And the producers, we filtered them. It wasn't just like, hey, do you want to come and show whatever? We made sure the producers had projects that are very brand friendly. So we had cooking shows and travel shows. There was a show about pet adoption, and I'm trying to think what else, like a lot of shows about kind of, diversity and inclusivity. And so they were sharing these ideas, and we had tons of talent. Our host committee for this was Scarlett Johansson, Colin Jost, Elizabeth Banks, um, Tom Brady's doing production. He's on our host committee. John Legend, Steven Soderbergh, the filmmaker, who is astounding. Um, Michael Sugar and myself. So those are the
Wow.
people who, just lean in, like, really, and that's all Michael's. he's from that world. Those are his people. He's talking about what we're up to. And, the thing about it's a interesting time for both industries. And we're just trying to help them be closer together to recognize there's a different way of working that can solve the challenges both entertainment and the challenges marketers are trying to solve.
So that's cool. So you guys have the way up front, showcasing the producers and their projects that they're working on, and the brands are then invited to watch. And if a brand is like, "Wait a minute, this cooking show could work really well for my brand, Cuisinart,"
Yep,
and
that's
then I would
exactly right.
talk, and then I'm Cuisinart. Is that how you say it? Cuisinart, Cuisinart.
No, no, that's a good
I
one.
got it. So if I go, I'm the CMO of Cuisinart. I go to you, Matt, or Michael Sugar, right? And I'm like, I want to work with that producer. We see alignment here. Can you make
Yep,
this happen?
that's exactly right. And
So smart. What a good
we'll
new business tool. Wow.
yeah, I mean, it's cool because there's a lot of brands. Because you've mentioned us as an agency. Yes, we are trying to like we're going to Cannes Lions, for instance. I've gone many years. Michael, he's gone to the Cannes Film Festival a bunch. He's
Oh
never
yeah.
gone to the Cannes Lions. So,
I'm
and
I'm curious what he thinks the
yeah,
difference.
I
And
I will be too. And I hope one day I get to go to Cannes Film Festival. That'll be a
yeah,
nice pivot in my journey. So yeah, but that's exactly it. And it's an opportunity from because you would ask, I was an account guy, but I really love new business. Like I
yeah,
love just the creativity in, every pitch or every pursuit
right.
is
It's
for
tailored.
non-creative people. It's tailored and you're looking at business problems. And I've always thought there's a healthy dose of creativity in that whole
Yeah, everybody's got to
undertaking.
step it up in a
That's it.
traditional new business pitch.
Yep. So anyway, so yeah, this and it's a marketing tool for us and what we're doing.
Right, but you're
So
bridging, you're building connections, and it's mutually been it's beneficial for everybody. So
yeah, and the response has been terrific. So
I love it.
the a lot of the producers were really grateful for the opportunity to they're kept at arm's length. They either go through their agents, who then the endorsement people from the agency call, the media company, who all then call the brand. There's just so many people. And there's room for those folks too. It's not like they need to cut them out, but it's like, let's just put the people who ultimately pay for it in the room with the people who actually make it. And then,
Right, bridge.
really work out, early. And that's the other thing. It's like not, but because once the network has it, it's like, you know, one, it's so shaped that, it's a lot more expensive. And two, there's not, there's a lot of people who can say what will and won't be possible. When you're
Got it.
involved early, you can just kind of do more.
I love it. All right, Matt. How can people reach out to you if they have any questions? They want an intern, or they want a first job, or just to say hello. And
Sure.
you're in
I think
Nashville, right?
I live in Nashville, Tennessee. Yeah, like
You don't have to be in LA for this,
no, we know you don't. You don't have to be anywhere for any. I mean, for a lot of.
unless you want to be on a yacht.
Well, I would say actually, I mean, if you want to get your foot in certain industries, it's better to be in places like LA. I've just made enough connections that I don't have to be there. I can just visit there. But and
Right.
LA is a good place. I did live there for a long time too, after Hong Kong. And then I brought the family to Nashville. LinkedIn is the best place, Matt or Rotundo. My last name spelled Rotondo. That's probably the best place to hear what we're up to and reach out.
Wonderful job. You explained the concept well. We loved hearing about your journey, your advice. We did those pit stops along the way. So I hope people reach out, Matt, but really, really great stuff. Thank you.
Well, no, thank you for having me. I want to say I really think what you're doing is very valuable because people need help, and having someone who's been through it and very thoughtful in recognizing where someone else's insight can benefit the people who took the journey you took is not a lot of people take that initiative. So good on you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right.
All right. Go ahead and
I will
stop the recording.